Let's get more insight now into what we can expect from Orion's launch from a man who has been to space. Leroy Chiao was a U.S. astronaut, also commander of the International Space Station. Welcome back to the show, Dr. Chiao. You've been into space
great to be back with you.
You've been into space 4 times for a total of 229 days. How exciting is Thursday's test flight of Orion for you?
Well, this is exciting because this is the first U.S. government launch of a new spacecraft since the end of the shuttle program 3.5 years ago. And so while it can be considered kind of a moderate step in that we're only testing the capsule and only parts of it, nonetheless, it is significant. So I'll be watching, very much excited tomorrow morning.
Well, let's look ahead on what to expect. We've heard this week from the person managing the Orion project. Here's what Mark Geyer had to say about the test flight. I'll get your reaction on the other side.
A part of me hopes that everything is perfect. We land, high fives, everybody has a great time. But really, on a flight test like this, we want to discover things that are beyond our modeling capability and beyond our expertise so we can learn it and fix it before we put people on board. So that's why Thursday is so important for us.
Dr. Chiao, how will we know if this test flight is a success or failure?
Well, we'll know all along the way because the sensors, as you heard, will be recording and sending data back. The vehicle will return. It'll come down under a parachute. If you see a successful splashdown under the parachutes, you will know that it's been successful. And by success, I mean that we will have returned the vehicle safely. We will have gathered data on not only the heat shield and the temperatures it reached and how it performed, but also on some of the guidance, navigation, and controls, characterization of the radiation environment, and the separation and deployment systems. Notably the parachutes, to see how well those things work. All those subsystems, most of the subsystems have been tested to the greatest extent possible, but there's nothing like the real flight test to shake it all out.
Well, a little bit more now from NASA. The Orion program manager also explained all the things the agency will be examining before, during, and even after the flight. Let's listen.
1,200 sensors that's measuring temperatures, vibration, acoustics. We even had a radiometer on the heat shield that's measuring the temperature of the plasma. Those are recorded and not sent down. So there are two types of data that we have.
You mentioned some of that a few moments ago, but how different is the Orion spacecraft from the previous shuttles that NASA has used for decades?
Yeah, it's actually quite different. The Orion is much more like the Apollo capsules from the 60s, and it even looks like the same shape as the Apollo capsule. It comes down with a heat shield and under a parachute, whereas, of course, the space shuttle came down, landed on a runway with wings, much like an airplane, and was refurbishable and reusable. Now, Orion is also being designed to be refurbishable and reusable, so that, in that small way, they're kind of the same or similar. But really, the two methods of recovery are quite different. And so this really is a different spacecraft, a new spacecraft, borrowing old ideas and combining it with some new technology in the avionics and systems like that.
We heard from our correspondent John Zarella mention in a story that the head of NASA visited his counterparts in China last month, and you've worked closely with Russian, Japanese, and European colleagues. How likely is it, you think, that the United States and Russia are going to be working together anytime soon?
Well, we are still working together, the United States and Russia, as well as the other partners in the International Space Station program, the Europeans, Japanese, and the Canadians. And the space station is still operating at the working level. There is no problem. And, the space station is designed to be operated by this partnership. And so neither the United States nor Russia can operate it by itself without the other sustainably. And so, the international cooperation is the model for the future, and I'd like to see that extended to countries like China, who also are now spacefaring with their own astronauts. So I think there's a great opportunity here, and I'm hopeful, and I've been advocating and working for that kind of cooperation.
All right, Dr. Leroy Chiao, former NASA astronaut, thanks again for joining us from Houston, Texas.